It's July 26. Ukraine Media Center continues its operation. My name is Svetlana Shabarenko, and let me remind you that since now we work in cooperation with Suspilny in a comfortable community space called Urban Space 500, and now we will be talking about power shutdowns, sector reconstruction, and when will the situation improve. Well, we've already been able to see some improvements. So, Mr. Volodymyr, good afternoon. Good afternoon. So, first, we would like to discuss the suspension of operation of the one of the reactors of nuclear power plant. IAEA confirmed it. So, what can you tell us about it? Well, during the martial law, during the permanent attacks of the enemy, we cannot comment situation in some facilities publicly. We were confessing this principle and we continue doing so. That's why I cannot give any comments about this situation on top of that official information and information from IAEA. I think that this is where we're supposed to stop. Okay, so let's get back to the current situation in the power grid. As consumers, we already see some improvements. What can you tell us as a person from inside the system? Well, we have all reasons to expect that the most difficult period of summer is already through. We've had a couple of real difficult weeks. The situation has really improved thanks to the fact that this abnormal heat subsided, which resulted in reduction of electricity consumption, and also it's related to the fact that the scheduled maintenance of some generating capacities is already through as well. That adds additional generating capacity in the grid, reducing the deficit. So we now have 2 waves overall in power shutdowns instead of 3 or 4, and they are used depending on hours. Well, during some hours the deficit is higher, during some hours it's lower, during some hours we even can avoid implementation of any rolling shutdowns, and in case there is no additional damage to the power plants, the situation is going to improve within the next couple of weeks for sure. That's why we can safely state that for the time being the situation is stabilized and it's on a trend to improvement. Are there any significant scheduled maintenance of the reactors which is still pending? Well, the scheduled maintenance is underway in those reactors which are being maintained for the next winter, and we all clearly realize what are the challenges the winter is posing in front of us based on that amount of generation that was damaged by the enemy. 9 gigawatts without the last couple of months. This is why the maintenance campaign is underway. The reactors are going to be recommissioned. Some of them will be finalized before schedule, which will result in improvement of the situation thanks to the increase of the generating capacities in the systems. So back to the topic of reconstruction of the generating facilities. Is everything going according to the plan? And talking in percentage, which percentage was already repaired? Well, talking in percentage, I cannot disclose this information to you. However, we have all the data. We continue monitoring the information about the progress of repairs on a daily basis. We monitor the information about the available generating capacities. And talking about generation, every power plant has its schedule with the dates, with the persons responsible appointed, when which reactor will be recommissioned. And for the time being, I don't see any huge problems or any signals that would evidence any concerns. So all of the energy companies, including Ukrenergo, work 24/7 on preparation to the heating season. And talking about the mainway networks, with the exception of those facilities of ours which are being permanently attacked by the enemy and where the repairs are ongoing, not on such a high scale, because some of our power plants, well, all of our power plants have certain degree of protection, but it's safe to say that the mainway network is ready to ensure to provide the electricity supply to all of the regions. We are ready to cover the summer consumption and winter consumption too, but we should put it beyond the brackets, all those permanent attacks on our energy facilities, the results of which we need to rectify, but the practice proves that we can do it pretty promptly. It's applicable to, for example, today's attack, which resulted in disconnection of a number of consumers in the center of a country, and as of 9:30 this morning, all of those consumers were reconnected to the main grid. So again, mainway network will be ready. I can confidently say it, but again, given there are no new significant damage. And talking about the generating capacities, I think that the plan will be fulfilled or maybe even over-fulfilled. So my prediction is that we will meet this winter with the maximum number of power plants operating. Well, obviously, we have to take into account the challenge, but recently we had Deputy Minister of Economy visiting us who was saying the winter is going to be difficult and you cannot really rely on yourself. We can only rely on ourselves. So what is your opinion, or what is your forecast for this winter 24-25? Well, I've noticed that, this statement is becoming increasingly popular, that the people can only count on themselves, but there is a reason for the existence of the power grid, or there is a reason for existence of electricity technicians in this country. Well, first of all, I want to say that all of the citizens of our country can count on our armed forces, on our air defense forces. Secondly, you can count on the energy technicians. You can count on them continuing their operations, continuing their repairs 24/7. And thirdly, the consumers may count on themselves, of course, in a sense that all of us, we have such a utility know-how that we use to minimize any consequences of power shutdowns that we continue facing as Ukrainian consumers. So I would say it's a teamwork. We were always talking about this trinity: air defense, energy technicians, consumers. So this is the team that in cooperation may have us prepared for the winter, and we will be through this winter no matter how difficult it is. Okay, so let me put it in a different way. Will the winter of the season 24-25 be more complicated than the one of the years 22-23? Well, it depends a lot on the nature of the challenge. If anybody tells me which facilities will be targeted and to what extent they would be damaged or destroyed, I could answer you, but nobody knows what the enemy is going to do, and how successful their attacks will be. So that's why we have to maximize our readiness, the readiness of the power plants, the readiness of the networks, the readiness of the communities. We have to ensure that there are backup power sources installed at the critical infrastructure facilities in the cities in particular. And at the utility level, everything that we can do at our homes, whether to make it warmer or to buy some batteries or other things that we can do, yes, let's keep preparing. And let's look at the reality that we will have to deal with during winter. Ukrenergo is calculating the worst case scenarios always. We cannot afford being optimistic. As an operator of the power grid, we have to prepare to the complicated scenarios, and obviously we have relevant calculations, and we identify the priority activities for ourselves, for our technicians, for the local governments, so that consequences of any problems can be mitigated for the consumers promptly. So what is the situation with the import of electricity? Can you please tell us what is the percentage of imported electric power in the grid? Import has become an important factor ensuring our security. Remember, back in the beginning of 22, in March, we were able to get united with the European power grid, and thanks to that, we can have unprecedented amounts of import from European power grid. Now we can import 1.7 gigawatts from Europe to Ukraine, and the task of the market members is to implement this opportunity to buy that electricity abroad, import it to Ukraine, and sell it to the consumers. So everybody is doing their part here. Filling of this import corridor from Europe to Ukraine is an important task too. And after recent liberalization in the wholesale electricity market that national regulator has implemented within the last couple of months, it provided good momentum for the import or imported electricity to come to Ukrainian system. During this abnormal heat, the prices soared, which resulted in reduction of import. But I think as the situation normalizes in terms of consumption, both in Ukraine and abroad, both in Ukraine and Europe, we will be able to observe the system, this import corridor to be filled properly, and one way or another, this import plays an important role in coverage of our energy balance. So it's significant percentage of electricity that we import rather than generating inside of the country, and is competitive for other power sources such as renewable power sources, even thermal or hydropower plants. So yes, import is important, and it will continue having such role just until the moment that Ukraine reconstructs the damaged capacities and deploys the decentralized generation that we keep discussing so much, and the sprints of which we start witnessing in the power grid of Ukraine. So what is the resource for this import? To what extent it can be increased given all of the members of the deal agreed? Well, our capacity is quite big. There are just bottlenecks on European part in their grid. And after our request, the Association of European Operators, called NSOE, is calculating to what extent those bottlenecks may be circumvented or circumnavigated, and to what extent this import may be increased during winter time. in order to provide more electricity to the grid to reduce deficit in the network. So you mean the situation may improve this winter? Well, we expect to see the resolution before the winter, because obviously our task is to minimize the deficit that may emerge in winter. And you see, in this situation, when our generation was damaged by Russian strikes, we back up the generating capacities with the grid, and we ensure this opportunity, this option of import. We're talking to our European partners. I mean, it's a matter of months or weeks, so we're prepared better for the winter. Thank you very much. If we have any questions on the floor, dear journalists, please. Good afternoon, Mr. Volodymyr. Ukreninform, Tatiana Kulik. Well, I'm having a question regarding the grant that is about to be extended to you in amount of 100 million euro from European Union. So where will that money go? Well, it will be no sensation. It will be reconstruction. It will be protection of our energy facilities, and it will be used for the projects of construction of our grid, the aerial lines that would improve reliability for the consumers in the western regions. So those are the main goals, and all of them are classic for us. So basically, protection, reconstruction, and development of the network. And availing myself of this opportunity, I would like to thank our European partners, our partners from KfW, a German development institution, that Ukrenergo was extended unprecedented support in amount of 1.5 billion euro almost. And thanks to that amount, we were able to reconstruct not only our generating capacities, aerial networks, but we were also able to forward a lot of those funds to repay debt in the market, so that the power plants prepare better for the winter. This is why those grants and credit support is extremely important. So, but again, I've already mentioned what will be the purpose of this grant. Okay, so if you allow me, it's an important information about the protection of the energy facilities. So are those works in progress, or are we waiting for another grant to construct those protection measures? Well, we are already in agreement with our Western partners that they don't only finance procurement of transformers for us, but that they also support us in terms of construction of protection structures for our energy facilities. And I can say that within the last attacks, I mean, without going too deep into details, I mean, after the latest attacks, you've seen the reconstruction happening quite promptly, and it's thanks to the protection structures that are unique for our power grid and for power grid in general, for energy system. Well, the fact that we are able to get the consumers reconnected within couple of hours, not days or weeks, is the merit of those protective structures and air defense forces. Interfax Ukraine, Mr. Volodymyr, can you tell us about the preparation to the first bids for auxiliary services? What is the interest to them? When are they about to start? And what is the specifics of them? Well, those bids are in fact like us with the national regulator. We found a way to create economic conditions to make sure that the new decentralized generation can be built in Ukraine, specifically that part of it that is called the balancing generation. the one that is capable of taking part in balancing of the power grid. So we're talking about the bid with dozens, maybe hundreds of future power plants, a contract that will guarantee to them after they get constructed and connected to the grid payment for their services, which is called auxiliary service. In fact, it's a balancing service, it's a backup for our power grid, and that contract will be entered into for 5 years so that the new power plants can guarantee return, so that the investors can be explained how they get return on their investment in such power plants. So the first bid is about to take place in August already. We've reserved such a section of different investors, both Ukrainian and foreign, during the Berlin conference. More than 30 companies from Ukraine and Europe have come to our conference, as well as from other continents, and back then we were already seeing huge interest on their part, and now we can only see it increasing, and we see that a lot of Ukrainian companies who were not members of the energy market previously, now they are ready to build their own generating capacities, whether for the manufacturing capacities to avoid power shutdowns, and someone just to work in the market, just like a dedicated business, and it's inspirational. And we hope that the amount of services that we are about to procure within the first bid, and it's expected to be more than 1 gigawatt. So we hope that this amount will be sold, or at least the major part of it. Thank you very much. May I ask another question? Just recently, the government made a statement about their intention to exempt the consumers in the area within 20 kilometers from the front line, to have them exempt from the shutdown. To what extent will it influence other consumers? Well, it will not influence in any way, because unfortunately our citizens who still dwell in the areas close to the front lines, they really suffer from the electricity supply restrictions due to the constant shellings of the enemy, and their natural consumption is not so big, as you may understand. I personally think that this decision is absolutely just and logical, because for the power grid, the amount of their consumption is insignificant, and for the people in those regions, and I visit those areas quite frequently as I visit energy facilities over there. Well, we have to take our best efforts to make their lives easier, at least somehow, and I think that none of us here as consumers would not experience any negative influence from the fact that those people will be exempt from shutdowns. Well, and then another question: what is the short-term perspective? Harchenko and Boyko were saying that we may avoid power shutdowns. So what is your opinion on this situation right now? Well, I'm quite cautious with the predictions always, because there's at least one factor of uncertainty that is beyond our control, the enemy shellings. But without the shellings, I mean, any climatic anomalies that we were witnessing just recently, the situation looks like it's about to improve, because the scheduled maintenance of the generating capacities will be finalized shortly. And as I was mentioning, in September and October, we have quite good chances either to live either with minimal shutdowns or without shutdowns at all. So within those autumn months, I expect the situation to be way easier than in July, that is almost over. July that turned out to be the most difficult month of this year, of this summer. Yeah, we have questions from the journalists watching us online. So Igor Orel, Forbes Ukraine, can you please comment news about VAX authorizing the inspection of the chairman? Well, so what are the accusations? So it's about a dead case related to procurement of the body armor for Ukrenergo upon request of the National Guard of Ukraine in the beginning of March 2022. Remember, back then we all have friends who were looking for body armor, for the helmets, for armed forces, for our security and defense forces, and as a company we were not standing aside with the hands in our pockets. We found a couple of hundreds of armor vests. They were class 4 body armor, and we bought them at 16,400 hryvnia, VAT included. That price was way lower than the prices of many other government agencies who were procuring similar type of equipment back then. And we see that there are no claims to others except for us, and from time to time some no-name politologists try to throw in those so-called news to the media space, and in this case, for what I understand, they report to the court to have the activities of the company or my personally to be inspected by the law enforcement. I treat it as an attempt to create a sensation, and I think that this case never had and will never have any prospects of development either in courts or law enforcement. Why is it happening? Well, probably those $1.5 billion that Ukrenergo was able to raise are of concern to somebody. I mean, the funding during the invasion. Probably there are other factors, other reasons, but in one way or another, it just white noise. This is what I view it. Well, in case there are no more questions, then thank you, Mr. Volodymyr. Let me remind you, we were talking to Volodymyr Kudrytskyi, chairman of national energy company Ukrenergo, and Ukraine Media Center will continue at 1500, and we will be talking about release of our medics from captivity. Stay tuned.
Коли робили каву, воно є нюанс. Але тут такий, в принципі, більш жива атмосфера.
Я свої писаю,
Нормально.
давайте, може, трошки від, чи у нас є ще?
Без контролю.